welcome back to the Elevate Generosity series. My name is Greg Marsh with Elevate Group, and as I just said, this is our Elevate Generosity series. If this is your first time watching one of these, thanks for watching. Welcome. If you've seen some of the other segments that myself or Chris have done, then welcome back. We hope you'll watch all of them because we think there's value here. We think there's things that can be helpful as you are kind of growing the generosity and stewardship culture in your church. So today we're going to talk about the offering time. And the offering time is a critical time in our worship service, but it's also a time that has evolved, especially in light of a pandemic and things like that. The offering time has changed some, right? So the question is, are we nailing the offering time? Are we doing the offering time really well? And that is important. So there's a kind of a difference between the church and other nonprofits. And, you know, other nonprofits, they are working tirelessly. They're trying to find and reach donors and find ways to share their message with donors and potential donors. In the church, we have our donors and potential donors in front of us potentially 52 times a year, right? And oftentimes when I'm doing workshops or teaching in different parts of the country, especially if I have an audience that's church and nonprofits, I'll ask that question, hey, nonprofit people, stand up. They'll stand up. I'll say, would it make a difference if you could gather your entire donor base and potential donor base 26, 52, 12 times a year? And of course, they're like, that would make a huge difference. That would be a game changer, okay? In the church, we have that. We have our donors sitting in front of us many times a year, and we get to share our message, and so the offering time becomes critically important. And one of the things I see, and it's a little distressing to me sometimes, is that a lot of times we take the offering moment for granted. It's not funny to me, but kind of ironic that sometimes when we're looking for time in a service, we're going to play an extra song, or we've got an extra testimony. We get something in the service that's a little different than normal. Where they want to usually take that time from is the offering time. They want to take it from there. We should never take the offering time for granted. Remember that our giving is an incredibly important part of our worship and our spiritual growth. We should never, just as important as the rest of the worship service, we should never take that for granted. The offering time just can't be an afterthought. We can't plan out the whole service and go, oh yeah, we got to do an offering time. Who wants to say, hey, now's when we receive our offering? Okay, Billy, you want to say that? That's great. It can't be an afterthought. It can't be an afterthought. And as I said earlier, you got to remember that the offering time is an important part of worship and spiritual transformation. You know, I would argue, especially in our country, in the Western world, in the United States particularly, that one of the few ways that we can truly sacrifice, and sacrifice we know is a big part of worship, right? And one of the only ways, and maybe the only way we can really sacrifice, is through our giving. And that's why the offering moment becomes so critically important. And I know everybody's not passing the plate anymore. Some people go, we don't pass the plate. COVID happened. You know, we don't pass the plate. We've got boxes in the back, or most people give online. So the offering moment's not that important. It doesn't matter if we're receiving an offering, if there's a plate going around, if we're pointing to boxes in the back. It doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're elevating the importance of giving during the service. We're talking to people about the fact that this is something that's very important to us. Right? It's very important here at this church that we give. So we remember it's a part of worship and spiritual transformation. And there's a lot. I've been in worship planning meetings when I was on church staff, and since working with hundreds of churches all around the country, I've been in countless worship planning meetings. And we prioritize lots of things. We make lots of things a priority for our weekend worship service. The offering moment should always be among our priorities. It should always be a priority. It should never be, cut, shaved, forgotten about, whatever. It's an important part. So, you got to ask, what does your offering moment look like now? What does it look like now? And sometimes it's rushed, right? Sometimes it's rushed. Hey, we just got to get through this because we can get on to the next song, or we got to get to that cool video, or the pastor's got a great message this week and we just need to get through this so we can get to that, right? It's rushed. Don't rush it. Sometimes it's just rote, right? It's just the same thing we said every week. Hey, this is the time in our service we receive an offering, blah, 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 blah. Same thing said every week, and it's very rote. It shouldn't be rote. It should be original. It should be unique. It should be different. It should be meaningful and impactful each week. Is it careless? And I don't mean like you don't really care about it. What I mean is it because it was last minute, because it was kind of haphazard, because it wasn't a priority, is it carelessly executed? It's almost offering time, and we forgot to decide who was going to go up there. You go up. No, I'll go up. Is it careless? And in many places, sadly, it's absent. My wife and I, when we vacation, we'll attend a church, and we were recently vacationing, and we attended a church, great church, wonderful worship, great message. People were friendly, great facilities. No offering moment at all. No mention of giving, no anything. And that is a part of worship. That is a part of our spiritual transformation. That is something, when Jesus said, where your money is, that's where your heart will be, right? It's very important, and it was just absent from their service. So we need to make our offering moment more memorable. Share stories. Share stories of people's giving. And you'll hear those stories, and sometimes you can turn them into a video. A lot of times I used to say, hey, I would hear that story. I would say, hey, can you email me that story, and can I have your permission to read that, even with or without your name? And so they would email me that story, and we would read it, read the email, and so we're sharing those stories. Have a monthly theme. Have a monthly theme. So it could be like ownership. Maybe 1 month we're talking about ownership. Hey, everything that we have, God owns. We don't have anything that belongs to us. Everything we have belongs to God. Right? Faith. It takes a lot of faith. It takes trust to give it, and trust is faith. We got faith in God that if we give a percentage of our dollars, a percentage of our net worth away, that we're going to be okay. Trust. Kind of the same thing, but sometimes it's faith. We say we have faith in God, but maybe that trust is just missing. We just go, I have faith in God, but I'm going to hold on. I'm a little afraid if I give X amount of dollars, something might come up before the end of the month, and I might need that money. So we got to have trust. We got to have faith and trust. Compassion. One of your things could be compassion. Hey, when you give, here's some things that happen. Here's some ways that the money that's given here impacts the lives of other people and reshapes their eternity. And compassion. Freedom. There's great freedom that comes from being a committed giver, right? When we give, when we've let go and given, kind of freed up some of our income and kind of let God take over and given freely, there's a amount of freedom that comes with that that's really, really cool. And I've heard those stories so many times as well. I'm sure you have. And so the themes could go on and on and on. I'd love to talk with you about that. If you ever have a question, reach out by email or whatever, get in touch with me. I'd love to have a conversation with you and talk about some of these themes and what they can look like in some really cool and kind of unique ways to carry them out. So we want to be sure that we also, that during the week, we want to take time each week in our worship kind of evaluation or whatever to evaluate the offering time. Don't just do it and not worry about it. So we want to evaluate it, because the offering time will never get better unless we intentionally focus on making it better. Right? We have to say, hey, we want to do, just like everything else, we want worship to be better every week. In our music time during worship, like we don't just go, oh, it's good enough. We're not going to really try to make it any better. We're going to cut back on practices because it's fine. No, we always want to make it better. The offering time's the same way. We want to focus intentionally on making it better each week. So kind of as we wrap this up, here's a couple things or a few things to remember. Using themes is a great way to educate people as it relates to generosity and stewardship. We want to educate people about generosity. Many people just don't understand what biblical generosity and stewardship look like or why they should even care, right? And we use themes sometimes to educate people as it relates to that. Use Scripture. Use Scripture to teach and remind people about a faithful and generous God, right? We're modeling what He has already done. And we use Scripture to kind of to kind of back that up. And here's something else that's really important, and we don't often do, is we want to use every opportunity we can to connect giving. So when someone gives, we want to connect that to the church's larger mission and vision. In other words, when you give here at our church, here's how it advances our vision and mission. We want people to understand that it's more about, it goes to more than just paying salaries, patching holes in the roof, and fixing the potholes in the parking lot, right? We are changing lives. We are reshaping eternity. And we want people to understand how their giving is connected to that larger mission and vision. And my favorite, this is kind of my soapbox thing, is celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. And when in doubt, celebrate, right? We want to celebrate all God has done, is doing, and will do at your church. People don't know the stories, the cool stories. We hear so many cool stories when we're in the ministry, when we're on church staff. We hear all these cool stories of ways that our ministry, the ministry of the church, that we have been able to do because of the generosity of others. We hear how that has impacted people's lives. They're such great stories. But if we don't tell those stories, if we don't celebrate those stories, if we don't celebrate the things that our ministry is accomplishing, people don't know. So wrapping up, a couple things one more thing to remember is to model. Share how the church is being generous with the resources God has provided. And we got to share with people, this is how we're using the resources that God and the congregation have provided, right? We want to share those. And we want to share examples of the generosity of church leaders whenever we can. So we don't share amounts or percentages, but we want to share stories of people in our church, leaders, staff, whatever, stories of their generosity. It's very important for people to understand that, hey, the people that are kind of advocating generosity and stewardship are practicing generosity and stewardship, right? And lastly, I can't stress this enough, say thank you. Say thank you a lot. Say thank you to those, and be careful. We don't want to say thank you with a blanket statement, because there's people that aren't giving. But we want to always be sure that we're saying thank you to those that are, and encouraging, and not making those that aren't feel bad, but encouraging those who aren't to join that. But say thank you, and say thank you a lot is something we can do. So, hey, thanks for watching. I hope this helps. If you got any questions, please feel free to reach out via email or give us a call. We'd love to help.